So, Stellar Blade Blood Rain was officially announced at Summer Game Fest, and the trailer gave us a brand new setting, a new combat system built around gauntlet brawling mechanics, and a brand new protagonist named Evie, a short-haired, white-armored fighter who carries a very particular kind of energy. She is cool-looking, she is distinct, and the game around her already appears to be a serious production from Shift Up. And yet, if you spent any time online in the hours following that reveal, you would have seen almost none of that discussed. What you would have seen instead was a war. A very familiar kind of war. One that has very little to do with video games, and everything to do with the ongoing culture conflict that has swallowed gaming discourse whole. This is what the Stellar Blade Blood Rain conversation actually looked like, and more importantly, this is what it reveals about the people having it. On one side of the debate, critics came out immediately with a specific and serious accusation. Social media posts spread rapidly, claiming that Evie looks somewhere between 12 and 14 years old. The argument being made was not simply that she looks young, it was that Shift Up had deliberately placed a childlike face onto a highly sexualized adult body, and that anyone who found the character appealing was, in the words being used across these posts, a degenerate. The criticism pointed to specific visual elements: large eyes, a small nose, round cheeks, features that critics described as a deliberate baby schema, designed to appeal to a niche audience with troubling tastes. Some of these posts accumulated thousands of likes. Others went viral on gaming forums, including Reddit, where users wrote things like, "That is the face of a child on a very sexualized body," and "I feel gross for just seeing this." The volume and intensity of the reaction was hard to miss. On the other side, defenders of the design pushed back just as forcefully. Their core argument was a straightforward one. Evie looks like a young East Asian woman in her early 20s, and the assumption that a petite, youthful-looking face is inherently childlike reveals more about the accusers than it does about the design itself. They pointed to real women, Korean actresses, influencers, public figures, whose natural features closely mirror Evie's, and asked whether those real people would also be considered to look like children under the same standard being applied. Supporters also noted something specific about the footage itself. The clips being used to fuel the outrage were not representative of the trailer as a whole. Critics had zeroed in on a handful of specific camera angles that, due to lighting and framing, genuinely did skew Evie's appearance younger, while ignoring the majority of the footage, where she reads clearly as a young adult. The argument was that the outrage was being manufactured from cherry-picked frames, rather than an honest engagement with the full reveal. There was also a pointed accusation of hypocrisy. Several people observed that many of the accounts loudly condemning Evie's design were the same accounts that had previously defended older, more matronly female character designs in Western AAA games as strong, empowering choices. The implication was clear. A youthful East Asian woman is problematic, but a deliberately aged-up Western woman is progressive. To the defenders, this inconsistency looked less like principled critique and more like cultural bias dressed up as ethics. And on the surface, this is where the debate sat. Two sides screaming at each other across a digital divide, each convinced the other is either a moral monster or a perpetually offended ideologue. But if you take a step back and look at how this argument is actually structured, something much more interesting starts to emerge. Because almost every accusation and every defense made in this debate is, on close inspection, a self-report. Both sides expose something about themselves that they almost certainly did not intend to expose, and taken together, the whole discourse reveals something uncomfortable about the state of gaming culture at large. Let's go through it layer by layer. Start with the critics. Their central claim was that Evie's design is inappropriate because she has childlike features paired with a sexualized body, and that engaging positively with this design is evidence of something wrong with the audience. It is a serious accusation, and one that, if accurate, would absolutely be worth raising. But consider what the critics had to do in order to arrive at that accusation. They watched a trailer about a short-haired woman in white combat armor punching monsters through a neon-lit cyberpunk city, and their first, immediate immediate, dominant response was to view her through an intensely sexual lens. They did not lead with, "This combat system looks derivative," or "The setting feels familiar," or even, "I'm not sure about her character design." They led with a sexualized reading of her appearance and then accused other people of being the ones sexualizing her. The critics were the ones who hyperfixated on her body. They were the ones who zoomed in on the jiggle physics. They were the ones who immediately connected a youthful face with a sexual context and then called that connection evidence of other people's depravity. The projection here is striking. To level the accusation they leveled, they had to first be the ones viewing a female action protagonist through an explicitly sexual frame, and then perform moral outrage about it. The defenders, meanwhile, conducted their own version of the same failure. Evie's design has genuine artistic depth that was simply never discussed in this discourse. Her white armor, black overcoat, and short crop carry a clear visual lineage. They echo the boss from Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, one of the most iconic and thematically rich character designs in gaming history. Her aesthetic is rooted in the classic tomboy archetype, a type of character that has a long tradition in action games and one that Shift Up appears to be engaging with seriously. The combat mechanics shown in the trailer introduced something new to the Stellar Blade formula. The setting, a dense, glowing urban environment, marked a significant visual departure from the first game's desolate, post-apocalyptic landscapes. There was material here for a genuinely interesting conversation about what kind of game Blood Rain is trying to be. Instead, the loudest voices on the defense side immediately grabbed Evie and turned her into a culture war weapon. She became the anti-woke bombshell. She became proof that the right kind of game was being made by the right kind of developer to upset the right kind of people. The discourse from this side was not about game design. It was about scoring points, and Evie was the instrument. By reducing a well-designed character to a political battering ram, her defenders demonstrated that they cared less about the artistry involved than about the rhetorical value she provided in an ongoing online argument. And then there is the broadest layer of all, which is perhaps the most uncomfortable to sit with. Stellar Blade: Blood Rain is a sequel to a polished, well-received action game from a developer that has shown real craft. The announcement came with new world building, new mechanics, a new protagonist with a defined visual identity, and what appears to be a genuine expansion of the first game's ambitions. It was a substantial reveal with a lot to dig into. Within hours, any meaningful conversation about what kind of game this is going to be was completely buried. Discussion of the combat system, the setting's visual design, the narrative implications of introducing a new main character, the direction Shift Up is taking the franchise, all of it was gone, replaced wall to wall by arguments about whether a digital character's facial structure is age-appropriate. The gaming community as a whole self-reported. It revealed that the culture war is now the primary product being consumed whenever a game is announced. More compelling, more engaging, and more immediately rewarding to participate in than any discussion of the actual game. The outrage is the content, the argument is the entertainment, and both sides are feeding it because both sides benefit from it. The critics get moral authority and social media engagement. The defenders get a culture war victory and a sense of righteous community, and everyone gets to feel like they are on the correct side of a meaningful conflict. Meanwhile, the game itself, the thing that was actually announced, with its mechanics and its world and its characters and its story, sits quietly in the background, waiting for the noise to die down. The Stellar Blade Blood Rain controversy is not at its core a debate about character design or cultural standards or the ethics of game development. It is a demonstration of how thoroughly internet culture has colonized gaming discourse. Two groups of people, both convinced they are fighting for something important, looked at the same trailer and both missed the trailer entirely. What Shift Up revealed at Summer Game Fest was a game. What the internet chose to engage with was everything around it. And that, more than any individual accusation or defense, is probably the most telling detail in this whole story.